at Montgomery County Community College, and you're going to be doing a performance here tonight with a quartet that features James Carter, you know, the legendary Reggie Workman, and the drummer who is
Faroon.
Falo-
Faroon of class.
Yes, and so we're very excited.
I'm excited, you know, Helen,
Yeah.
you one of the forerunners of this music thing that we do, and you are such a great influence, not only for me, but to all of the musicians, because all of the musicians constantly talking about your tremendous support, how you support the musicians, and I think we need more Helen Haynes.
Oh, thank you so much, O.D. Well, we're here to really talk about you and to talk about, it's great that you and Reggie are going to be here tonight because Philadelphia, you know, has such a tremendous jazz history. And both you and Reggie are living, you know, Philadelphia jazz history.
Right.
And I'd like you to talk a little bit about the scene as you were developing as a musician, and as Reggie was developing as a musician, and about why is Philly such a great jazz city?
Well, you know, it goes all the way back to Coatesville Harris, Philly Joe Jones, the Heath Brothers, John Coltrane, but just a whole host of great musicians during that period. And shortly after that, it was Lee Morgan, Reggie Workman, and myself. We used to have like workshops and jam sessions almost like 2 or 3 times a week. Lee Morgan would come past my house and say, well, look, Odean, I have a new tune. And I think the great thing about Philadelphia, Jimmy Heath and Train was the forerunners of giving information back to the younger musicians. Benny Golson is another forerunner. Benny Golson used to give me all of his original compositions. As a matter of fact, I have the original handprint of Benny Golson's I Remember Clifford.
Oh my goodness.
So he used to give Lee Morgan, Reggie Workman, and myself, we used to get, we would get hand down all of the things by Charlie Parker, because Jimmy Heath was a good friend of Charlie Parker's, and Charlie Parker would give him information. Unfortunately, I didn't have too much, I didn't see Charlie Parker that much, but the Heath brothers, they used to pass all that information down to us.
Wow.
And Reggie and Lee Morgan and I, we used to come together, you know, like maybe once or twice a week and just play and jam. So it was like a great, great learning process for all of us.
Fantastic.
Reggie Workman, just before he left to go to New York City, he was one of the forerunners in getting all of the musicians together every week. And he would go around in his car. He was one of the few people who had a car. He would go around in his car and pick all of the musicians up, and then we would come together and have a jam session.
Wow.
So I feel very blessed that I was raised in that period, because there were just so many great musicians during that period, developing. Kenny Rogers, C. Sharp, it was just a whole host of great musicians.
And of course, you had some association with the great John Coltrane as well.
John Coltrane, I used to go past. As a matter of fact, Train gave me my first major gig with Jimmy Smith when he got ready to go with Miles Davis. He asked, you know, I don't know, I was really scared to death when he said, well, look, Odean, I want you to finish out my engagement with Jimmy Smith. He was working at a place called the Spider Kellers, and I finished the engagement out. And from that engagement, I got a little bit more recognition around town, and I started getting a lot of, you know, like a lot of work, making a lot of gigs. So that association with John Coltrane was like going to one of the highest institutions in the whole world, because he was another very humble, very beautiful person, and he was always searching for like information, because he thought information was the key. And as you know, it is the key.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, you've been recognized quite a bit in recent years as the tremendous composer that you are. You've got recognition through Chamber Music America. Of course, you won the prestigious Philadelphia, the Pew Fellowship Award in the arts. The American Composers Forum has, you know, utilized you in terms of looking at other composers' work. And could you talk a little bit about your approach to composition? Of course, one of my favorites is Sis. You know, if you could just talk a little bit about.
Well, you know, I feel very blessed, because my parents both was musicians, and it was mandatory. Being in the South, it's mandatory that you have to go to church every Sunday.
Yes.
You know, before you do anything else. And my recollection and remembering every Sunday, the big Baptist choirs, and my mother conducting and playing the keyboards, my father playing the trap drums, and He was a great baseball player. And from a very early on, I was surrounded with nothing but music. And they came to Philadelphia. I was probably about 8 or 9 when we arrived in Philadelphia. So from that period, when I got into Philadelphia, I was looking for something that to recapture all of those beautiful sounds that I had experienced coming up, raising in the church. I started out on the keyboards, and I started playing the keyboards, the clarinet. From the keyboard, I went to the clarinet. And from the clarinet, I started working on different instruments. Finally, when I arrived with the saxophone, that was my voice. And then start to write from the keyboard, from the clarinet to the saxophone. So I was very influenced by the big Baptist churches, and I think that's what had a lot to do with my writing.
You know, I think one thing that some people don't really recognize, that as artists from the United States, as American artists, as an art form that really grew up in America, that jazz musicians are probably the most well-traveled of our artists around the world. And I know you've played just about everywhere. And, you know, can you talk a little bit about some of the places that you have performed?
Well, you know, traveling with Max, I traveled with Max quite a bit. Japan, Brazil, Italy, Switzerland, Germany.
You recently did a gig in Australia, didn't you?
Yeah, we Australia, Sydney. So I think traveling around, you get a sense of what all the people in the world, how they think and how they feel about this music. I get a sense that when we go to Europe, the people there, for whatever reason, have a greater understanding of what we do in terms of the creative aspect of what we do. Because when you look out in the audience, you see maybe 3 or 4 generations. You see the grandmother, the great-grandmother, the little 5-year-old. You see like a whole maybe 4 or 5 generations of people sitting in the audience who really like this music, what we're doing. And I think for the most part, when you go to Europe, you can make more money in terms of what you do to support what you're trying to do. It's just a whole different thing. But I think now this country is beginning to say, well, look, why can't we do the same thing? So a lot of people like yourself are beginning to reach out and really beginning to support and to do things like we're doing here, like the Montgomery County Community College. Say maybe 25 years ago, this kind of thing was not happening. But now, you know, like the universities and like Amherst,
right.
A lot of universities and colleges are beginning to really reach out to the music. And I think that all sort of came from Europe, because it started in Europe, how the people really welcome the music that we was doing. So it's a great feeling, I think, now to see that it's slowly beginning to catch on, not only in Europe, but also in this country.
Excellent. Well, look, I want to thank you. I'm looking forward to your performance tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Helen, for all the support. You know, let me just say this. Most people don't realize it, but you are responsible for the Pew Fellowships in Art grant that I received. I was one of the first recipients. You're responsible for that. You don't like to take the credit. But you was the one that came to me and said that you get an application in the mail, and Odean, that's for real. And if you need some assistance with it, I will help.